Now with that, now let's look at the many terms for moksha that we have. So in our Shastra and in our tradition, there are many terms that are used for moksha. Now here, let's look at several words. It is not exhaustive, but certainly it gives us a glimpse into the many words. Moksha is certainly one of them. The other one is called apavarga. Apavarga is another word that is used for moksha. Nirvana. Nirvana is another word that we use, as well as also shared with Buddhism as well. Now, Kaivalya is another word that is used for moksha. Mukti is another one. And then Nishreyasa is another one. Among all of the words, the oldest word for perhaps moksha is Nishreyasa. So Nishreyasa is perhaps the ancient word or the most oldest word for moksha. So this is something that you find in our Shastra as well. So now we have seen the many terms that we see that can be used as synonyms for moksha. Now let us look at the types of moksha. So this is going to be very tricky, right? So there are different types of moksha, actually, to be very honest. Many of us may not know this, but it's very important for us to recognize that there are many types of moksha. So the question is, why are there many types of moksha? Because it depends on your competence. It depends on your disposition, and also depends on one important point, which I stress again. It depends on Bhagavan. It depends on Ishvara, right? So sometimes we think that we are the one who is choosing, but actually we're not choosing anything, because you did not choose your parents. You did not choose your childhood. And as much as many things that you think that you have chosen, in fact, you have very limited choices. A lot of things are given to you more than you having had it. Even if you think that you have earned a promotion, it is at the expense of many other factors that we can't control. And similarly, there are many things that influence us to choose the type of moksha that resonates with us. All right. So let us look at the 5 types of mukti that is revealed in the Muktika Upanishad. So in the chapter 1 of the Muktika Upanishad, there are 5 types of mukti that are revealed. Let us look at each one of them. The first one is called Salokya Mukti, the liberation that is called Salokya. The second one is called Sarupya. The third one is called Samipya. The fourth one is called Sayujya. And the fifth one is called Kaivalya. All right, so let's look at all of these 5 to understand why are there 5 types of mukti or 5 types of moksha. Let us look at the first one, which is Salokya. So I'm going to now take a translation from the Muktika Upanishad. So this is what Salokya Mukti is. So here it says, anybody, even though leading a wicked life, attains Salokya, not other worlds, by uttering my name. So the Muktika Upanishad is a very interesting Upanishad. It's a dialogue between Lord Rama and Hanuman. So Hanuman inquires about the types of moksha, and Lord Rama is answering the question. So here, Lord Rama is saying, anyone, even though leading a wicked life, attains Salokya by uttering my name. So what does that mean? So here the word Salokya literally means entering into a sphere called heaven or Swarga. So the first type of moksha, or the first type of freedom that we can talk about, is going into a place after death, obviously, where you are always happy. And you can simply attain this by just uttering the name of God. So this is the simplest way to go into heaven in that sense. So this becomes the first type of mukti. Basically, anyone who goes into heaven. So if someone tells you the goal of Hinduism, goal of Sanatana Dharma is to enter heaven, they are not wrong actually. Can you see that? It is not wrong, because it is there in the Shastra. But whether you resonate with it depends on your disposition. Right? Can you see that? It depends on your disposition. We are not here to dispute that. It depends on who you are and what karmas you bring that determines whether you find this attractive. So an example of this that I'm going to share with you is like this one. So Salokya is like going to a vacation to another country where you're having a good time. Okay, so that's Salokya. So you go into a very nice space called Swarga, where there is Ananda, there is happiness. It's like going to a vacation to another country. You go there, you look at this nice blue ocean and you feel so good. Right? So that is how the first type of mukti is. Now let's look at the second type, which is called Sarupya. Now Sarupya here you can see, etc. But what I take a few seconds to read this before I focus on a couple of things. So here, regardless of what is the means, but here you get a special mantra. So that means it's beyond uttering the Lord's name. Like you get something very special called the Taraka mantra. And then you will get my form. Like this is the key point. He gets my form. So the Sarupya Mukti means you take on the form of the Devata that you are worshipping. You take on the form. It's not that you replace that person. You start getting those particular attributes of the Devata that you are worshipping. So that is called Sarupya. That's why it's called Sarupya, Rupa. Rupa means form. All right, so you take on the form of your Ishta Devata. So you look at, there is also an ancient school in the Sanatana Dharma that also subscribe to this as well. So this is one type of Mukti. So an example of this is this one. Can you see? So many Supermen, but different actors. But all of them are Supermen. Am I right? So it is like taking on the form of another person. See, each one of them, you can see in this picture, the many faces. The only Superman that I watched in my generation was Christopher Reeves. All right, so that is, so you know what is my age by now. Okay, so basically taking on the form of the person that you adore, of the Devata or Ishvara that you see in a particular Rupa. So that is called Sarupya. It is totally valid in Sanatana Dharma as well. And then the third one is called Samipya. Now Samipya is, the key point here is good conduct with mind fixed upon me, loving me as the self of all, the twice born. Here the twice born refers to three varnas. Those of you are familiar with the varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya. Why? Because the twice born are people who have access to the Veda. That's what it means. That means they have learned about the knowledge of the Veda. Does not exclusively or only refer to the varna. It reflects the wisdom that they carry. They get nearer to me. So the key word here is nearer to me. You get it now? So it's like this, some of us, when we meet our CEO and then you stand next to your CEO, you have a conversation, and then for 2 weeks we talk about the episode. I got to speak to the CEO, I met the Prime Minister. I took a photo and it's on Instagram, right? So this is exactly what it is. So there is a value when you get closer to God because you are so close to Him. Maybe you are even having a personal conversation with Him, of course, in Swarga, in heaven. So how do you explain this? So this is how you explain this, right? So you take a photo, this person right next to Michael Jackson, and that's it, right? I took a photo with Michael Jackson. So what does it mean? Now, please pardon me. I'm not showing these photos to belittle any of these types of mukti. I'm giving you modern examples so that we can relate to what these ancient texts are actually telling us, all right? So it's like being close to someone inaccessible. So this is the key point. The key word is close and someone inaccessible. In this case, it's Ishvara or our Ishta Devata or any kind of Devata that we worship. So that is called Samipya, the third type of mukti. The fourth type of mukti is Sayujya. Now, Sayujya literally means this one. Okay, so take a few seconds to read this. So here is a very nice example. It says insects changing into the bee, something of that sort. So it's a transformation or what we call as liberation of identity, or sometimes I call this merging. All right, merging into something such that you lose your earlier form. So you get the point? So that means you merge into God. So let's say I pray to Lord Vishnu. That means I merge into Lord Vishnu and I lose my form. All right, so that is called Sayujya. So a good example to explain Sayujya is like this. When you put sugar into water, it dissolves. Can you see that? You don't see it anymore. It loses its earlier form. So this is the fourth type of mukti, Sayujya. So a lot of yoga traditions sometimes tend to move towards Sayujya at times. And also a lot of theistic traditions, bhakti traditions also subscribe to Sayujya. There are a lot of bhakti saints that are depicted in our Shastra where they actually merge and disappear, in the sanctum of a temple and stuff like that. All right, so this is a depiction. So now comes the fifth type of mukti. So Kaivalya. Now listen, look at this particular statement from the Muktika Upanishad. Interesting, right? So it now creates a contrast. So for obvious reasons, because the Muktika Upanishad is trying to say that although there are four kinds of liberation that we just saw, which is starting from Salokya, Sarupya, Samipya, Sayujya, now Kaivalya. So what the Muktika Upanishad is saying, actually, the only real type of mukti is Kaivalya. So this is a twist, right? So all are valid, but one somehow is the most, supposedly the most supreme. So this Kaivalya Mukti that we are talking about is something very interesting. So we have looked at all the illustrations. So in Kaivalya Mukti, what we are trying to see is this. Now look at this wave in the ocean. But Kaivalya is like knowing wave to be water. It's very interesting, right? Even when the wave is a wave, it is still water. Even when the water takes on a form of the wave, it doesn't loses its nature of it being water. So therefore, this Kaivalya is actually purely gained through knowledge, which is a very key point that we need to see. Sayujya, the means is actually meditation, dhyana, right? We saw in Sayujya. But in Kaivalya, even meditation is not the means, which we will talk about a little later. All right, meditation cannot be the means to actually attain Kaivalya. And this is the mukti that is taught through the Upanishads by Adi Shankara. So Adi Shankara presents this definition of Kaivalya, of course, through his own ways. He does not use the word Kaivalya as we possibly were expecting, but he describes it. So whenever I use the word mukti, or whenever I use the word moksha, I am referring to Kaivalya. So I would like to request all of you to just, in the back of your minds, now recognize or identify Kaivalya Mukti whenever I use the word Mukti and Moksha from this point onwards. All right, so please keep that in your mind.